Hey guys, we are in day 188 in our Bible reading plan, 2 Corinthians 7 through 9 and Proverbs 19, 1 through 14. Today's reading is all about grace, and no one knows grace better than the Apostle Paul. So today's big idea is that you will only experience more of God's grace to the extent that you live your life making room for more of it. All right? Follow along the thread of grace as you read these three chapters. But basically, the grace of God is what allows Paul to make it through his affliction. In fact, as he says in verse 4, in all our affliction, I am overflowing with joy. I think this is the key to suffering. It's not just that you have God's strength in suffering, is that you have the ability to rejoice in suffering, which is a foreign language that frankly I am in the middle of learning because it doesn't come naturally. But God's grace puts you in places where you need more and more of Him. And in fact, he moves on to talk about, he's talking about the situation at the church and how he had written them the letter, and he was so pleased that they responded with repentance, because they could have responded another way with bitterness and stiff-neckedness, like we had read in the Old Testament about the people of Israel over and over again. But here he says he says, man, you didn't respond. He goes, you were grieved into repenting, for you felt a godly grief. And then he goes on and describes in chapter 7 what godly grief looks like. It is not just like, I don't want to get in trouble, but it's more of I yearn for God in my life. And that repentance, that grief, is a gift of grace of the Lord. And then he moves into chapter 8 and talks about this gift at the Macedonian church, which they didn't even have enough, but they were giving out of abundant generosity and a desire to give themselves first to the Lord in chapter 8, verse 5. That is at the heart of giving. And just reminds me of our ministry. So many people give not big, rich donations, but sometimes out of their lack, but they give because they believe that God is at work. And so it just really so moving to me. And then he encourages them in verse 11 chapter 8, so finish doing it as well. Like this we can start well, but we need the grace of God to finish doing the work he's called us to. And then of course chapter 9 is probably the highlight, so I don't want to get there and be like, oh, I'm almost out of time, because try to keep these under 4 minutes. But chapter 9 verses 6 through the end of the chapter, I mean, dude, these verses are incredible. A reminder of the heart of giving and why we should give, and the privilege of giving and the grace of giving, and how the more of God's grace you experience, the more you want to give, and then the more you have room for more of His grace. And so it's this cycle of like the chicken or the eggs. I mean, it's always God's grace that drives everything, but you're going to see more of it the more you sow. If you sow sparingly, you're going to reap sparingly. If you sow bountifully, you're going to reap bountifully. You say, how do we reap? Well, God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. And sometimes you look at your life and go, man, I'm not seeing that. I'm trusting God for more. Maybe you're giving sacrificially. Just wait. Our timing and God's, sometimes, man, we don't match. He's writing the story. Don't give up yet. Just keep on going. God's grace that supplies the gift, that gives you what you need, that allows you to give. He's going to sustain you. That's the promise today. You will be enriched in every way, to be generous in every way. So let's take to heart this lifestyle of grace, and let's ask God for more of His grace as we lean into repentance and into generosity today. Will you do that? Love you guys.